They thought chains would break her. They thought 3 nights in the Alpha King's fortress would be her end. That a broken Omega sold like livestock to pay her father's debts would crumble under the weight of Nightfall's stone walls in the Predator's gaze of its ruler. They were wrong. The Alpha King wasn't keeping Alara Ashford as payment. He was binding the only thing that could save his cursed soul, and by the 3rd night, he would refuse to let her go. But first she had to survive the throne room. The obsidian floor was slick beneath Alara's bare feet. Cold, unforgiving. Each step echoed through the vast chamber like a death knell swallowed by shadows that clung to the vaulted ceiling high above. Torches guttered along the walls, their flames painting the carved wolves and ancient runes in shades of amber and blood. The chains bit into her wrists, silver, heavy. The metal burned against her skin with a heat that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with what she was. Omega, the lowest rung, the expendable. Guards flanked her on either side, their hands rough on her shoulders as they shoved her forward. She stumbled, caught herself, refused to fall even as her knees threatened to buckle under the weight of exhaustion and 3 days without proper food. The throne room was packed. Wolves in human skin lined the stone tiers that rose on either side of the long approach to the dais. 50, maybe more. Their eyes tracked her movement with the focused intensity of predators watching wounded prey limp past. The air thrummed with dominance thick enough to choke on. Alpha power pressed against her lungs until each breath felt like dragging broken glass through her chest. She kept her gaze down, stared at the obsidian stretching endlessly before her, counted her heartbeats to keep from screaming. A woman's laugh cut through the heavy silence. Sharp, cruel, musical. This is the debt payment. The voice dripped with amusement and disdain in equal measure. I've seen prettier stable girls, Thorn. At least they bathe. More laughter rippled through the gathered nobles. Alara's cheeks burned. She was filthy. She knew it. 3 days in her father's cellar, dragged through mud on the journey. Here, no chance to wash the grime from her skin or the tangles from her dark hair. Her dress hung in tatters, more holes than fabric. Bruises mottled her arms where rough hands had gripped too hard. Broken little thing, isn't she? Another voice. Male. Oily with satisfaction. Can't even lift her head. Probably can't bear pups either. What use is an Omega who can't even perform her basic function? Perhaps she's better suited to the kitchens or the brothels. A third voice. Female. Cold. Though even their standards exist. The words landed like blows. Alara's hands curled into fists at her sides, nails biting into her palms, hard enough to draw blood. The pain helped, kept her grounded, kept her from doing something stupid like trying to run or collapsing into tears. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of these wolves who already thought her weak. Enough! The single word cracked through the chamber like thunder. Conversation died instantly. The oppressive weight of dominance doubled, tripled, became a physical force that drove Alara's chin down toward her chest. Her wolf whimpered inside her, a small, frightened thing that wanted to bare its throat and submit. She fought it, locked her knees, kept breathing. At the far end of the throne room, seated on a chair carved from black stone and bone, was the Alpha King, Cale Thorn. Alara had never seen him before today. Her old pack spoke of him only in whispers, voices dropping to fearful murmurs whenever his name surfaced. The king who killed his own father. The king whose wolf balanced on the knife's edge of madness. The king whose gaze could strip the flesh from your bones and leave you a trembling, broken thing. From where she stood, he was mostly shadow. Broad shoulders draped in dark leather, etched with silver runes that caught the torchlight. Hair black as midnight, falling to just past his collar. Arms crossed over his chest, the firelight revealing old scars that traced up his forearms, where his sleeves were pushed back. But his eyes, God, his eyes, amber, glowing faintly in the dim light. Predator's eyes that fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness and something dangerously close to fear. The guards shoved her forward again. Closer to the dais. Closer to him. Marcus Ironwood stepped forward from his position at the king's right shoulder. Beta, commander. His steel-gray gaze swept over her without emotion, clinical and cold as a butcher assessing meat. The Ashford blood debt. His voice carried easily through the hall, formal and edged like a blade. Alara Ashford, 20 years of age, Omega class, presented as payment in full per the contract signed under the last blood moon. Her family's lands, their lives forfeit unless the king deems this settlement sufficient. Alara's stomach twisted. Her father's signature. Her mother's whispered pleas in the days before they came for her. Please, Alara, please understand, we had no choice. There was always a choice. They'd simply chosen wrong. She forced her gaze up, past the Da's steps, past the beta who watched her with all the warmth of winter stone, to the king himself. Cale Thorne leaned forward slowly, elbows resting on his knees. The movement was predatory, controlled. His gaze raked over her from head to foot, missing nothing. The bruises, the torn dress, the chains, the defiance she couldn't quite bury beneath layers of exhaustion and fear. This, his voice was low, rough, each word deliberate. This is what the Ashford Pack offers as payment for 300 gold pieces and 10 acres of Nightfall territory. Silence, Alara lifted her chin. Just a fraction, just enough. Speak, girl. The woman from before. Lady Vivian Blackthorne, Alara realized dimly. High-born, beautiful. Everything Alara wasn't. She stood near the front tier draped in crimson silk that clung to curves Alara would never possess. Her black hair fell in perfect waves over one pale shoulder. Her smile was a blade wrapped in honey. You have a tongue, don't you? Or did your pack cut it out before they sold you? More laughter, quieter this time, uneasy, as if even the nobles weren't quite sure how far they could push before the king's patience snapped. Alara's jaw clenched. She wanted to spit something back. Wanted to tell Vivian exactly where she could shove her silk gowns and her perfect hair. But her throat was dry. Her voice trapped somewhere between her lungs and her teeth. Cale rose. The movement was fluid, predatory. He descended the obsidian steps with the easy grace of something born to hunt, each footfall deliberate and measured. The crowd shifted, nervous energy rippling through the gathered wolves as their king approached the broken Omega in chains. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Alara could smell him. Cedar, pine, something darker underneath. Raw power that made her wolf press close to her ribs, confused and frightened, and God's help her drawn. Look at me. It wasn't a request. Alara lifted her gaze, met those amber eyes, felt the impact like a physical blow. Up close he was devastating, jaw carved from stone, high cheekbones marked with faint scars, a mouth set in a hard line that suggested smiles were rare and probably dangerous. He was tall, well over 6 feet, broad enough that he could snap her like kindling without effort. But it was his eyes that held her, amber flecked with gold glowing with the faint presence of his wolf just beneath the surface. And in their depths, something she hadn't expected. Recognition. His nostrils flared, subtle. Most wouldn't catch it. But Alara was close enough to see the way his pupils dilated slightly, the way his fingers flexed at his sides as if resisting the urge to reach for her. Your scent. His voice had dropped lower, rough, almost confused. What? He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Whatever he'd been about to say died unspoken. Alara's pulse hammered in her throat. She couldn't look away, couldn't move. The air between them felt charged, electric, like standing too close to lightning about to strike. Cale's hand lifted, slowly. His fingers brushed the underside of her jaw, tilting her face up another fraction. The touch was light, almost gentle. But the calluses on his fingers spoke of violence, and the heat of his palm against her skin made something low in her belly flutter with warning. Or want. She couldn't tell which. 3 nights. He spoke to her, but his voice carried to every corner of the throne room. Final. Absolute. You will stay in my private wing. You will eat at my table. You will obey the rules of my household. At dawn on the 4th day, the contract burns. Your family's debt is paid. You walk free. Alara's breath caught. 3 nights. Not months. Not years. Not forever. 3 nights. It was more mercy than she'd expected. More than she'd dared hope for when the guards had dragged her from her father's house. And if I refuse, the words slipped out before she could stop them. Stupid. Reckless. But some part of her, the part that still had teeth, refused to roll over completely. Vivian gasped. Someone in the crowd muttered about insolence. Marcus's hand moved to the weapon at his side. Cale's thumb brushed along Alara's jaw. Once. A strange, almost absent gesture. Then the contract stands. His gaze never left hers. Your pack becomes chattel. Your father loses his lands, his title, his life, and you. His lips curved. Not quite a smile, more a predator baring teeth. You end up in the breeding pen serving whichever alpha bids highest. Is that what you want, little Omega? The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. But beneath the words she heard something else. A test. He was testing her, waiting to see if she'd break. Alara swallowed hard. lifted her chin another fraction. "Touch me without my consent," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "and I'll claw your eyes out." Silence crashed over the throne room like a tidal wave. No one moved, no one breathed. Kale stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Amusement? Hunger. Then he smiled, a real smile this time. Small, dangerous, beautiful in the way a drawn blade was beautiful. Noted. He released her jaw, stepped back, turned to Marcus. Show her to the Luna's wing. See that she's fed and bathed. If anyone touches her, his gaze swept the crowd, lingering on Vivian. They answered to me. Marcus inclined his head. My king. The guards moved to grab Alara again, but KL raised one hand and they froze. He crossed to her, reached for the chains at her wrists. His fingers worked the lock with practiced ease, and the silver cuffs fell away with a clatter that echoed too loud in the sudden quiet. Alara's wrists were raw beneath, blistered, bleeding in places where the metal had burned. Kale stared at the wounds, his jaw flexed. When he looked up, his eyes had gone darker, more gold than amber. 3 nights, he repeated. Softer this time, meant only for her. Survive them and you're free. He turned and walked back to his throne without another word. Marcus gestured for Alara to follow. She did, legs shaking, mind reeling. Behind her, the throne room erupted into whispers and speculation. But she kept her gaze forward, kept moving. She'd survived the first test, only 3 nights to go. The Luna's wing was a cage dressed in silk and silver. Marcus led her through labyrinthine corridors lit by blue flames that burned without fuel in sconces, carved from the stone itself. Eternal fire. Magic. Alara had heard stories but never seen it. The flames cast everything in cool ethereal light that made the fortress feel less like a place where people lived and more like a tomb dressed up to receive guests. They passed guards stationed at intervals. Each one nodded to Marcus. Each one's gaze slid over Alara with varying degrees of curiosity and disdain. She kept her eyes forward, kept walking. Finally, Marcus stopped before a massive ironwood door etched with runes that glowed faintly silver. He pressed his palm to the wood and the door swung inward without a sound. The king's private wing. Marcus stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. Your rooms are through there, second door on the left. Do not wander. Do not attempt to leave without escort. Guards are posted at every exit. His steel gaze fixed on her. For your protection. The words held an edge that suggested protection might be a flexible term. Alara nodded. Words felt dangerous right now. Safer to stay silent. Marcus studied her for another beat, then turned and left without ceremony. The door swung shut behind him with a soft final click. Alara stood in the corridor alone. The silence pressed in. Heavy, expectant. She forced herself to breathe. In, out. Slow and steady, like her mother had taught her when panic threatened to claw up her throat. She moved forward, found the second door on the left, pushed it open, and stopped. The room beyond was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the entire cottage she'd shared with her family. A massive bed dominated the far wall, piled with furs and silks in shades of midnight blue and silver. A hearth roared with fire that needed no tending, filling the space with warmth that chased away the chill from her bones. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined one wall, barred with what looked like silver, but etched with runes similar to the door. Beyond the glass jagged peaks rose against a storm-lashed sky, dark and beautiful, and impossibly far from anything resembling home. To the right, a wardrobe stood open. Inside hung gowns, too many to count, midnight velvet, gossamer silk, heavy winter cloaks lined with fur, and at the bottom shoes. Real shoes, not the worn hand-me-downs she'd grown up with. These fit perfectly when she lifted one experimentally, as if someone had measured her feet without her knowledge. Alara's stomach turned, too exact, too prepared. He'd known she was coming, had known and prepared this cage weeks ago, maybe longer. She turned from the wardrobe and found a basin on a carved table near the bed. Water steamed gently within, scented with something herbal and soothing. Soap waited beside it, soft cloths, everything she needed to scrub away the grime and blood. For a long moment, she just stared at it all. This luxury, this prison. Then she stripped out of her ruined dress, stepped to the basin and began to wash. The water was almost too hot. It stung against her raw wrists and the bruises modeling her skin. But it felt good. Real. She scrubbed until her skin turned pink, until the dirt and blood swirled away into the basin, until she could finally see herself beneath the layers of filth. There were clothes laid out on the bed, not gowns. Simple things. Soft trousers, a tunic in deep gray, undergarments that fit as perfectly as the shoes. She dressed mechanically, braided her damp hair over one shoulder, and finally allowed herself to sit on the edge of the bed. It was too soft. She sank into furs that smelled faintly of cedar and something else. Him. This was his scent woven into the fabric, marking the space, claiming it even in his absence. Alara shuddered, wrapped her arms around herself. 3 nights. She could survive 3 nights. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning flashed across the peaks. Thunder rolled in the distance. And somewhere far below, a wolf howled. The sound was wrong, ragged, edged with struggle and barely leashed violence. It rose and fell, cutting across the thunder like a blade through silk. And every instinct Alara possessed screamed that whatever made that sound was losing a battle it couldn't afford to lose. She stood, moved to the window, pressed her hands against the cold glass. In the courtyard below, visible through sheets of rain, a massive wolf paced, white and gray and easily twice the size of any normal pack wolf. Its eyes glowed amber even from this distance. It snarled at the guards who kept their distance, weapons drawn but not raised, as if they knew better than to provoke it further, as if they knew exactly whose wolf prowled the stones with murder in its gaze. Kale. Alara's breath fogged the glass. She watched as the wolf's head snapped up, toward her window. For one impossible moment, their eyes met across the distance, and something inside her chest pulled tight. The wolf stilled, just for a heartbeat. Then it threw its head back and howled again, and the sound was so raw with loneliness and rage that Alara felt it in her bones. She stepped back from the window, heart pounding. 3 nights. She was beginning to suspect that might be all the time either of them had left. Sleep wouldn't come. Alara lay in the two soft beds, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced in the firelight. Her mind raced, circling back over the throne room, the king's eyes, the way his touch had felt against her jaw, the wolf in the courtyard whose gaze had found hers like a lodestone seeking north. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the silence pressed down with suffocating weight. She gave up sometime past midnight, rose, wrapped one of the heavy cloaks around her shoulders, and moved to the balcony doors. They weren't locked. Alara hesitated. Marcus had said not to wander, but the balcony wasn't wandering. It was still technically her room, adjacent to it at least. She pushed the door open. Cool night air rushed in sharp with pine and distant snow. The balcony was small, stone railing etched with protective runes that hummed faintly under her fingers when she gripped them. Below, the training grounds sprawled in silver and shadow. Empty now, the wolf was gone. Alara breathed deep. Let the cold burn her lungs. Let it chase away the heat that still lingered where Kael's fingers had touched her skin. Can't sleep. She spun. Kael stood just inside the balcony doorway, half in shadow. He wore only loose black trousers that hung low on his hips. Nothing else. His chest was bare, broad, mapped with scars that told stories of violence survived. Claw marks across his ribs, a ragged crescent near his left shoulder, a thin white line over his heart like someone had tried to carve it out and failed. His hair was damp, clinging to his temples, as if he'd shifted recently and bathed quickly after. Alara's pulse kicked. She took an instinctive step back. Her spine hit the railing. Words failed. She swallowed. Tried again. The storm. I couldn't. Liar. He stepped onto the balcony proper. Closed the distance between them with 3 deliberate strides. Not threatening, but not exactly safe either. You heard the wolf. It wasn't a question. Alara lifted her chin. Yes. And you came out here to see if it would tear you apart. His lips curved, humorless. Brave. Or stupid. Maybe both. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Kael laughed, low, rough. The sound scraped against her nerves in a way that was entirely too pleasant. He moved to the railing beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin despite the cold. Close enough that his scent wrapped around her. Cedar and pine and something darker. Wilder. That wolf. He stared out at the training grounds below. It wants things it shouldn't want. Hungers for things it can't have. And every night it gets harder to pull it back. Alara watched his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. The curse, she said quietly. That's what they call it, isn't it? The nightfall curse. His gaze cut to her, sharp, assessing. What do you know about that? Only whispers. She tightened the cloak around herself. They say your father went mad, that the alpha power consumed him until there was nothing left but rage and blood. I say, she hesitated. Say it. They say you killed him before you turned 25, in the challenge circle, that the pack watched you tear him apart. Silence. Kale's hands curled around the railing, knuckles white. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, empty of inflection. I was 22. He'd been gone for years, mind eaten by paranoia and bloodlust. He saw enemies in every shadow, called challenges against his own council, accused half the pack of treason. His jaw flexed. I told him he was unfit to rule. He laughed, called me pup, so I stepped into the circle. Alara waited, didn't push. I thought I could restrain myself. Kale's gaze fixed on something only he could see. Win without killing. Prove I was strong enough to lead without becoming what he was. He exhaled slowly. I was wrong. What happened? He taunted me, said omegas were good for breeding and bleeding, said my mother died because she was weak. His voice dropped. Rough. Raw. My wolf snapped. Elara's chest ached. She'd seen the aftermath of challenge fights, knew what snapped meant when an alpha's control shattered. When I came back to myself, Kale continued, the circle was empty. He was in pieces and half the pack was on their knees. Not in respect. His lips twisted. In terror. She should be afraid, should pull away from this man who admitted to tearing his own father apart in a mindless rage. But all she felt was a terrible, aching sympathy for the boy who'd had no choice but to become a monster to save his people. You're sent. Kale turned to face her fully, his gaze intense, searching. Earlier, in the throne room, when I got close to you, my wolf. He trailed off, shook his head. It pulled back. For the first time in months, it pulled back without a fight. Alara's breath caught. I don't understand. Neither do I. His hand lifted, hesitated. Then his fingers brushed against the curve of her jaw, light, careful, as if she might shatter. But I intend to find out. The touch sent electricity racing down her spine. Her skin buzzed where his fingers rested. Warm, calloused, gentle despite the violence she knew those hands were capable of. She should pull away, should put distance between them. But her body refused to cooperate. The breathing. Kale's thumb traced the line of her jaw once, slowly. When you're frightened, you lock it down, hide it. But this court, his gaze darkened. They'll smell fear on you the moment you walk into a room, and they'll use it. So what do I do? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Control it. His hand slipped from her jaw to the back of her neck. Warm, grounding. Breathe in, hold it. Now imagine a door in your mind. Put the fear behind it. Lock it. Then the anger. Then the urge to run. Alara closed her eyes, did as he said. Inhaled deep. Held. Pictured a heavy wooden door. Shoved her terror at the throne room at the chains at 3 nights with a king who might lose his mind and tear her apart. Shoved all of it behind that door and slammed it shut. Locked it. What remained was smaller. Harder. A core of stubborn defiance that refused to die, no matter how many times she'd been told she was worthless. Better. Kale's voice was closer now. Rough. Approving. You're stronger than you pretend to be, Alara Ashford. She opened her eyes, found him inches away. Close enough that she could count the faint gold flecks in his amber gaze. Close enough to see the way his pupils dilated when she met his eyes. You don't know me. But her voice lacked conviction. No. His hand was still at her neck, thumb brushing the sensitive squint just below her ear. But I will. 3 nights, little Omega. That's all the time we have to figure out why my wolf wants to tear the world apart to keep you safe. Her pulse hammered against his palm. She knew he could feel it, knew he could smell the shift in her scent as her body responded to his proximity despite her mind's protests. And if we don't figure it out, she forced the words past the tightness in her throat. Kale's gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there. When he looked back up, his eyes had gone darker, more gold, his wolf rising too close to the surface. Then one of us doesn't survive the 4th dawn. He released her, stepped back. The sudden absence of his heat left her cold. Sleep, he ordered, voice rough. Tomorrow night you'll dine at my table. The pack will be watching, judging, waiting for you to break. His lips curved, sharp. Don't give them the satisfaction. He turned and walked back into her chambers, disappeared through the main door without another word. Alara stood on the balcony alone, heart racing, skin still tingling where he'd touched her. 3 nights. She was beginning to suspect that was barely enough time to unravel the mystery of what she was to the Alpha King, or what he was becoming to her. The second night began with silk and venom. A servant arrived at sunset with a gown. Midnight blue velvet that clung to curves Alara barely possessed and fell in graceful folds to the floor. The neckline dipped lower than anything she'd ever worn, showed the sharp angles of her collarbones, the hollow of her throat. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl looking back. Clean, hair brushed until it shone and left loose down her back, the gown transformed her from broken Omega into something that might almost belong in a king's court. Almost. The bruises on her wrists were still visible despite the long sleeves, and her eyes held shadows that no amount of velvet could hide. Marcus arrived precisely at the appointed hour, nodded once when she emerged. The king waits. Follow me. The dining hall was smaller than the throne room, but no less imposing. A long table carved from dark wood dominated the center, laid with silver and crystal that caught the candlelight in glittering fractals. Wolves already filled most of the seats. Nobles, council members, highborn pack who'd earned their place at the king's table through blood or service or birth. They all turned as Alara entered. Silence crashed down, heavy, assessing. At the far end of the table, Kael sat in a high-backed chair carved from obsidian. He wore formal leathers tonight, dark as night, etched with silver runes that caught the light when he moved. His hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp planes of his face. His eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Marcus gestured to the chair at Kael's right hand. Of course. Not down the table where she could blend into the background. Right beside the king where every eye could watch. Every nose could scent. Alara crossed the remaining distance, forced herself not to hurry, not to hunch her shoulders or drop her gaze. She took her seat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Kael's gaze swept over her, lingering at her throat, her wrists, the shadows under her eyes. Something flickered in his expression, gone too quick to name. You clean up well, he said, low enough that only she could hear. Before she could respond, a voice cut across the table. Musical, poisonous. My king! Lady Vivian Blackthorn sat 3 chairs down. Tonight she wore crimson silk that made her pale skin glow like marble. Her black hair fell in artful waves over one bare shoulder. Ruby earrings caught the candlelight. She smiled, all teeth. How generous of you to include your guest at our table. Though I must confess I'm surprised you allowed her to sit so close. Isn't there some concern about fleas? Laughter rippled down the table. Quiet, cruel. Alara's hands clenched in her lap. The door in her mind shuddered, threatened to burst open and spill all the rage and humiliation she'd locked behind it. Breathe, hold, lock it down. Kael's fingers drummed once against the arm of his chair. The sound cut through the laughter like a blade. Silence fell. Lady Vivian, his voice was soft, dangerous. You seem concerned about vermin at my table. Should I have the servants check your seat? I understand Blackthorn Manor has had issues with rats recently. Vivian's smile froze. Color flooded her cheeks. Down the table, someone coughed to hide a laugh. Kael turned to Alara, his expression smoothed into something almost pleasant. Ignore them, they're testing you. Pack dynamics. Wolves will always push at the weakest member to establish hierarchy. And I'm the weakest member. Alara kept her voice level. Are you? Before she could answer, servants began bringing food. Platters of roasted venison, root vegetables glazed with herbs, fresh bread that steamed when broken, meat pies, wine in crystal goblets. Alara's stomach cramped with hunger. The last real meal she'd eaten had been, she couldn't remember. Eat. Kael reached for his own goblet. You'll need your strength. She hesitated. No royal taster? You're not worried someone poisoned the troublesome Omega? His lips curved, almost a smile. I'd know, and you're more valuable alive. He paused. For now. Not exactly comforting, but she picked up her fork anyway. The food was incredible. Rich, flavorful. Each bite felt like a small rebellion against every hungry night she'd endured in her father's house. She ate slowly, carefully, refusing to wolf it down despite her body's demands. Around them, conversation resumed. Low murmurs about pack business, territory disputes, trade agreements. Alara listened more than she spoke, cataloged names and faces, noted who deferred to whom, which nobles watched the king with loyalty, and which watched with poorly hidden resentment. Vivian watched Alara with open hostility. Tell me, Miss Ashford. An older man across the table leaned forward. Council member. Silver hair, sharp eyes. What skills do you bring to Nightfall? Surely your pack didn't send you empty-handed. A trap, obvious and baited, Alara set down her fork. I can read and write, do basic mathematics. I know herb lore for healing. I can hunt, trap, and dress game. She met his gaze evenly. And I survived 3 days in my father's cellar with nothing but rats for company. Does that count as a skill, Lord? Counselor Thaddeus? His eyes narrowed. And your mother? Where did she learn this herb lore? She's dead. Alara picked up her wine. Fever took her when I was 10. The pack healer refused treatment. She took a deliberate sip. Said we couldn't afford his services. Kale's fingers stilled on his goblet. When she glanced at him, his jaw was tight, eyes darker. How tragic. Vivienne's voice dripped false sympathy. To lose one's mother so young, and now you're here, sold by your father to pay his debts. Rather like being orphaned twice, isn't it? The words hit their mark. Alara felt them lodge in her chest like barbs. At least my father had the decency to wait until I was grown before selling me. Alara kept her voice light, conversational. Better than being married off at 15 to secure a trade agreement, wouldn't you say, Lady Vivienne? Vivienne's face went white, then red. Her goblet hit the table hard enough to slosh wine over the rim. How dare you, enough! Kale's voice cut through the rising tension like a blade through silk. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The Omega is under my protection. That means she sits at my table, eats my food, and enjoys the same courtesy you would show any other guest in my hall. His gaze swept the gathered nobles, lingered on Vivienne. Unless someone would like to challenge that arrangement, no one spoke. Good. Kale reached for the wine and refilled Alara's goblet himself, a gesture so casual it seemed almost absent. But the message was clear. Tell me about your mother's herb lore. What could she treat? And just like that, the temperature in the room shifted. Alara found herself talking, halting at first, then more easily, about the plants her mother had taught her to identify. Which ones stopped bleeding, which eased pain, which could be used to treat infection or fever. Kyle listened, asked questions that showed he actually cared about the answers. And slowly, carefully, Alara felt some of the tension bleed from her shoulders. Around them, the dinner continued. But in the small space between the king and the Omega, he'd claimed as debt payment, something unexpected began to take root. Not quite trust. Not yet. But the possibility of it. The corridor was empty when Alara finally returned to her chambers. Marcus had escorted her from the dining hall with his usual silent efficiency, then disappeared with a curt nod. She pushed open the door to her rooms, stepped inside, let the heavy wood swing shut behind her with a soft click that felt too final. The fire still burned in the hearth. The bed still waited, piled with furs and silk. But the space felt different now. Less like a prison. More like a cage she'd been given a key to, but hadn't yet figured out how to use. Alara moved to the window, pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the storm had passed. Stars scattered across a clear sky, hard and bright and impossibly distant. Well, this is cozy. The voice slithered through the air like smoke. Male. Young. Amused. Alara spun. The room was empty. She was alone. Don't bother looking for me, little guardian. I'm not actually there. A low chuckle. Just a bit of magic. A whisper through the wards. Kale's protections are strong, but not quite strong enough to keep out an old friend. Her pulse kicked. She backed toward the door. Who? Cassius Vane. Though you won't have heard of me, I'm what you might call unaligned. A rogue. A trickster. A wolf who never bows. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. And I have a gift for you, Alara Ashford. A warning wrapped in truth. I don't want you're not nobody. The playful tone bled away, left something sharper, older. Your mother's line doesn't trace back to common pack stock. It traces back to something older. Something the Nightfall Kings spent 3 generations trying to erase because they feared what it could do to them. Alara's hands shook. You're lying. Then explain why the Alpha King's wolf went quiet the moment you entered his throne room. Why he can't stop watching you. Why his curse, the one that's been eating him alive for years, suddenly has a leash it never had before. She pressed her palm to the door behind her. Needed the solid reality of wood and iron to ground her. You want the truth. Cassius' voice dropped to barely a whisper. Ask him about Isolde, the last Omega who tried to save the cursed king. Ask him what happened when he refused to claim her properly. When he let her walk away because he was too afraid of what the bond might do. Stop. She died, little guardian, alone, hunted by his enemies because she carried his scent but not his mark. And Kyle Thorne has lived with that guilt every day since. Silence crashed down. Alara's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her mind raced. Isolde. The name carried weight. Grief. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't like seeing old patterns repeat. The voice began to fade, growing distant. And because you deserve to know what you're walking into. 3 nights, Alara. That's all the time you have to decide if you're his salvation or his next regret. The presence vanished. Completely. As if it had never been there at all. Alara stood alone in her chambers, heart pounding, mind spinning. Isolde. She crossed to the door, jerked it open. Marcus stood in the corridor outside, hand on his weapon. Miss Ashford, I need to see the king. Now. Marcus's eyes narrowed. It's late. Now. Her voice didn't shake. Please. For a long moment, Marcus studied her. Then he nodded once. Follow me. They moved through corridors Alara didn't recognize, deeper into the private wing, past more guards, more locked doors. Finally, Marcus stopped before a heavy door of dark wood. He knocked once. My king, the Omega requests an audience. Silence. Then Kale's voice. Rough. Let her in. Marcus pushed open the door, gestured for Alara to enter. She did. Heard the door close behind her with quiet finality. Kale stood by a massive fireplace. He'd changed out of the formal leathers, wore only loose trousers now and nothing else. His hair was loose, damp, as if he'd bathed. The firelight painted his scars in golden shadow. He turned to face her, eyes wary. It's the middle of the night, Alara. Who was Isolde? The question landed like a blade between them. Kale went very still. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Where did you hear that name? Does it matter? She stepped forward. Tell me, who was she? And what happened to her? For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then his shoulders dropped. Just a fraction. She was an Omega. His voice was carefully empty. From a border pack. Smart, brave. She came to Nightfall 5 years ago as part of a trade delegation. And my wolf wanted her. Kale turned back to the fire. For the first time since I took the throne, it went quiet when she was near. The curse. He exhaled slowly. It eased. Not gone, but manageable. Alara's chest tightened. So you claimed her? No. The word was sharp, final. I refused. The bond would have tied her to me, to the curse, to the madness that's been eating my line for generations. I told myself letting her go was mercy. Was it? She left Nightfall. Kale's hand curled into a fist against the mantel. 3 months later, enemies found her. Used her to get to me. By the time I arrived, his voice cracked. Just for a second. There wasn't enough left to bury. Alara's throat closed. She pictured it. The girl who'd tried to help, who'd been killed for the crime of carrying an alpha's scent without his protection. I swore I'd never claim another, Kale continued. Never put another Omega in that position. Better to die mad and alone than condemn someone else to Isolde's fate. And yet here I am. Alara crossed to stand beside him. Debt payment, 3 nights. What happens when those 3 nights are over, Kyle? He looked at her finally, eyes raw, haunted. You walk free, far from Nightfall, far from me, and I pray that this time I'm strong enough to let you go before the curse kills us both. The firelight danced between them. Outside, a wolf howled, lonely, lost. Alara understood now. Why he'd made the deal, why 3 nights and not forever. He was trying to protect her the only way he knew how, by pushing her away before she could die for him. What if I don't want to go? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Kale's eyes widened. Alara, what if there's another way? What if the curse doesn't have to win? He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his heat, smell the cedar and pine, see the war raging behind his eyes. There is no other way. His voice dropped, rough, almost desperate. The curse takes everything. And I can't watch you die like she did. Alara lifted her hand, placed it against his chest, over the thin white scar above his heart. His skin was warm, solid, real. Then we have 2 nights to find a third option, she said. Because I'm not Isolde, and I don't break as easily as you think. For a moment, neither of them moved. His heart thundered under her palm. Hers matched its rhythm. Then Kale's hand covered hers, pressed it flat against his chest. His eyes searched her face like he was memorizing every detail. 2 nights left, he whispered, and I'm already running out of reasons to let you leave. The door in Alara's mind shuddered, cracked, and for the first time since she'd been dragged to nightfall in chains, she wondered if walking away free would feel anything like victory, or if it would simply be another kind of cage. Dawn came too quickly. Alara had returned to her chambers sometime before first light, mind spinning with Kyle's confession and the weight of choices she didn't yet understand. Sleep claimed her in fitful bursts, dreams tangled with memories, her mother's hands teaching her which herbs stopped bleeding, Isolde's faceless ghost bleeding out in shadows, Kael's eyes haunted and golden and impossibly alone. She woke to gray light filtering through the barred windows and the certainty that something had shifted in the night. The door she'd built in her mind to lock away fear had cracked, and through that crack something dangerous leaked. Not terror, not quite. Want. She shoved the thought away, dressed in the simple clothes laid out for her. Dark trousers, tunic in deep gray, boots that fit perfectly. Everything in this cursed fortress fit perfectly, as if the stones themselves had measured her and found her wanting, but dressed her anyway. The second day, 2 nights left. The thought echoed with every heartbeat. A knock at the door, sharp, efficient. Marcus stood in the corridor when she opened it. His steel gaze swept over her, once assessing, then he nodded. The king requests your presence in the war room. Now. Not an invitation, a summons. Alara followed without argument. They moved through corridors she was beginning to recognize. Past the dining hall where she'd survived Vivian's venom. Past the throne room where chains had first bitten her wrists. Deeper into the fortress heart where strategy lived and died. The war room doors stood open. Inside, Kael bent over a massive table carved from a single slab of dark wood. Maps sprawled across its surface. Markers denoted territories, borders, trade routes. Seraphina stood at his shoulder. Kael's sister, and one of the few faces in Nightfall that didn't look at Alara like something to be scraped off a boot. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical braid. Her leather armor spoke of function over beauty. They both looked up when Alara entered. Miss Ashford. Seraphina's smile was brief but genuine. You look rested? A polite lie. Alara's reflection that morning had shown shadows under her eyes deep enough to drown in. Kael straightened. His gaze found hers across the room and held. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement of the conversation they'd shared in firelight. The ghost they'd named. Thank you, Marcus. Kael's voice was carefully neutral. That will be all. The beta hesitated. His gaze flicked between his king and the Omega. Then he bowed slightly and withdrew, pulling the door shut behind him. The silence that followed felt weighted, expectant. We have a problem. Kael gestured to the map. Reports came in at dawn. Rogue activity along our eastern border. 3 patrols went dark in the last week. Alara moved closer, studied the markings. She'd never seen a strategic map before, but the basics were clear enough. Red markers clustered along a section of forest that bordered unclaimed territory. Rogues, she looked up. Or something else. Seraphina's eyebrow arched. Clever. Most wouldn't question the obvious conclusion. Most haven't spent their lives watching people lie about obvious things to hide uncomfortable truths. Alara traced a finger along the border. 3 patrols is a pattern. Rogues don't usually coordinate well enough for patterns. No, Kael's mouth curved slightly, almost approval. They don't. So someone's organizing them. Alara met his gaze. Someone with resources and motivation to test Nightfall's defenses. That's what we're trying to determine. Seraphina crossed her arms. The question is why now, and what they're looking for. Kael's jaw tightened. His gaze dropped to the map again, but Alara saw the way his fingers curled against the wood, saw the muscle jump in his cheek. He thought the attacks had something to do with her. You think they're after me? She said it flat. Statement, not question. I think, Kael said carefully, that your arrival has complicated things. Word spreads fast in the pack world. A debt paid with an Omega. The Alpha King keeping her in his private wing. His eyes lifted, gold flickering in the amber. People notice, people talk, and some people see opportunity in chaos. Then send me away. The words tasted like ash. Before more of your people die. No. The single word cracked through the room like a whip. Seraphina blinked. Kael's hands flattened on the table, knuckles white. You're under my protection. That doesn't end, because cowards hide in shadows and test our borders. Brother, Seraphina started. A horn cut her off. Deep, resonant, the sound rolled through the fortress like thunder shaking dust from the rafters. All 3 of them froze. 2 blasts, a pause, then 2 more. Breach. KL was moving before the echo faded, already reaching for the weapons belt hanging on the wall. Sarah, get to the southern watchtower. Coordinate the defense. I want eyes on every approach. And her, Serafina nodded toward Alara. With me. Kale buckled the belt. Drew a short sword that gleamed even in the dim light. Silver, etched with runes similar to the ones carved into the fortress walls. Until I know what we're facing, she stays in sight. No time to argue, no time to question. Serafina was already gone, boots echoing in the corridor outside. Kale grabbed Alara's wrist. Not rough, but firm enough that she had no choice but to follow as he pulled her from the war room. The fortress had transformed. Where before it had been a place of heavy silences and watchful eyes, now it roared with organized chaos. Guards ran past with weapons drawn. Shutters slammed across windows. The blue flames in the sconces flared brighter, responding to some magic Alara didn't understand. What's happening? She had to raise her voice to be heard over the commotion. Breach on the eastern wall. Kale didn't slow. Could be a diversion. Could be the real threat. Either way, you're not staying in an unguarded room while my attention is split. They reached the private wing. Kyle shoved open the door to her chambers with enough force to crack it against the wall. The space looked exactly as she'd left it. Bed made, fire burning, nothing disturbed. But the air felt wrong, charged, like the moment before lightning struck. Inside, Kale pushed her through the doorway, followed, crossed to the far wall where tapestries hung in heavy folds. His fingers found a seam in the stone that Alara had never noticed. Pressed, runes flared pale blue, outlining a door she'd walked past a dozen times without seeing. The hidden door swung inward. Beyond was a narrow space barely wide enough to stand in. The walls hummed with power. Wards, thick enough that even looking at the opening made Alara's teeth ache. Get in. Kale's voice left no room for argument. I'm not hiding in a closet while Alara. Her name cracked out of him like a whip. He grabbed her chin, forced her eyes to his. His were already starting to glow. Gold bleeding into amber. His wolf too close to the surface. You lock this from the inside. You do not open it for anyone but me. No matter what you hear. Understand? Fear clawed up her spine. Not for herself. For him. For what it meant that he was already losing the tight control he usually wore like armor. You think they're here for you, she whispered, or for me. Doesn't matter. His thumb brushed once lightly against the corner of her mouth, the gentleness of it at odds with the violence gathering in his eyes. Either way, you stay breathing. Voices shouted in the corridor, closer, urgent. Kale pushed her toward the warded space. I will come back for you. And if you don't, the question hung between them, raw, honest. Then break the wards at dawn and run. His jaw flexed. But not before, promise me. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wouldn't hide while he fought. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't the Alpha King giving orders. This was a man who'd already watched one Omega die because he couldn't protect her. I promise. He nodded once, then pulled her close. Fast. Pressed his forehead to hers for a single heartbeat. His scent wrapped around her. Cedar and pine and something wild that made her wolf press close to her ribs. 2 nights left, he breathed against her skin. Don't make me waste them burying you. Then he was gone. The hidden door swung shut. Runes flared bright enough to leave after images. And Alara stood alone in humming darkness, heart pounding, as the sounds of battle erupted beyond the walls. Time moved strangely in the warded space. Alara couldn't tell if minutes passed or hours. The magic muffled sound turned everything distant and dreamlike. She heard shouts, the clash of steel. Once a howl that could have been Kael's wolf, or could have been her imagination. She pressed her palms flat against the cool stone, forced herself to breathe. In, hold. Like he'd taught her. Lock the fear away, stay present, stay ready. The wards suddenly flared, bright, blinding. The hidden door swung open. Kael stood in the opening, covered in blood, eyes still burning gold. His shirt was torn. Deep claw marks scored his ribs. More blood, not all his, spattered his face and arms. But he was alive. Out! His voice was rough, more growl than words. Now! Alara stumbled from the warded space, her eyes swept over him, cataloging injuries with the efficiency her mother had taught her. The claw marks were deep but already beginning to close. Accelerated healing. Alpha blood. But there was a puncture wound near his shoulder that still bled sluggishly. Silver. That wouldn't heal without help. You're hurt. Later. He grabbed her wrist, pulled her toward the door. We're leaving, now. What happened? Rogues, 6 of them, breached the eastern wall and made straight for this wing. His grip tightened, not painful, but absolute. They weren't testing defenses. They were hunting. Her stomach dropped. Hunting what? Kale's eyes cut to hers. Gold. Feral. You. They rode at dawn. 3 horses. Kale on a massive black stallion that looked like it could kick through stone. Marcus on a gray that matched his disposition, steady, watchful, built for endurance. And Alara on a smaller bay mare that seemed almost gentle by comparison. The eastern gate stood open. Guards watched them pass with expressions Alara couldn't read. Fear, concern, something darker. No one tried to stop them. Where are we going? Alara kept her voice low. The forest pressed close on either side of the narrow road, ancient pines rising like cathedral columns into a gray sky. The old forest. Kale didn't look at her. His attention stayed fixed on the road ahead, on the shadows between the trees. There's someone you need to meet. And the attack contained 4 rogues dead, 2 escaped. Marcus spoke from behind them, his voice flat, professional. But they left something behind. He urged his horse forward, drew even with Kael's, held out a scrap of fabric. Dark, stained. Kael took it. His jaw went tight. He handed it to Alara without a word. She unfolded the cloth, found a symbol embroidered in silver thread, a wolf's head, but wrong, twisted. The eyes were empty sockets. The jaw hung open too wide. Do you recognize it? Kael asked. No. But something about it made her skin crawl. House shade. Kael's hands tightened on the reins. Old blood. High council. They've served nightfall for generations. He paused. Or pretended to. Lord Demonshade. Marcus's voice held contempt. Vivian Blackthorn's father. He's been quiet since you took the throne. Too quiet. Alara's mind raced. Vivian. The beautiful woman who'd mocked her at dinner. Who'd spilled wine and smiled like a knife in silk. You think he sent the rogues? She looked at Kael. Why, Kael? Because you're a complication he didn't anticipate. Kael's gaze finally cut to hers. Because if my wolf stabilizes, if the curse eases, I don't need what he's been offering for the last 3 years. Which is his daughter. The words tasted bitter. As Luna. As the solution to the nightfall problem. Understanding crashed over her. Vivian wasn't just a jealous noble. She was a would-be queen. And Alara's presence had shattered whatever deal Demon had been building. So he sent rogues to kill me. Alara's voice came out steadier than she felt. Clean. Deniable. Blame it on random violence. Yes. Kael's expression was carved from stone, which means staying at nightfall puts you directly in his crosshairs. The wards protect the private wing, but I can't watch you every moment. And Damon is patient. He'll try again. So we run. No. Kael's eyes flashed. We ride to someone who has answers, who can tell you what you are and why my wolf won't let you go. The road narrowed. Trees grew thicker, older. The temperature dropped despite the climbing sun. Alara pulled her cloak tighter. The second day stretched before them. One more night after this. The thought was a stone in her chest. They rode in silence for hours. The forest changed around them. The pines gave way to older growth. Trees with trunks what as houses. Bark that glittered faintly silver in the filtered light. Moss hung in curtains from branches high above. The air tasted different here, sharp with magic and ancient secrets. Marcus raised a hand. They stopped. Movement, ahead and to the right. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. 6, maybe more, staying parallel to our path. Kael's head tilted, listening. His eyes had gone full gold, wolf rising too close to the surface. Ambush point is 300 yards ahead. Marcus's hand moved to his axe, where the road crosses the stream. Trees close in, perfect kill box. Can we go around? Alara kept her voice low, not without losing half a day. Kael's smile was sharp, dangerous, and whoever's waiting knows it. So we spring the trap. Marcus's tone suggested this wasn't his first ambush. No, Kael looked at Alara. Something shifted in his expression. Can you ride hard if you need to? Yes. Good. He reached across the space between their horses. Took her hand, his palm was warm, calloused. When the fighting starts, you run. Straight through. Don't stop. Don't look back. Marcus will cover you. And you. His smile widened. All teeth. I'll be busy. Before she could argue, he released her hand and kicked his horse forward, not toward the ambush point, directly into the trees to their left. Straight toward where Marcus said the attackers waited. My king, Marcus swore, grabbed Alara's mare's bridle. Hold tight. Then they were moving. Fast. The mare surged forward, following Kael's stallion into the underbrush. Branches whipped past. Alara ducked low over the horse's neck, clinging to the saddle with everything she had. Shouts erupted ahead. The clash of steel. A wolf's roar that shook the trees. They burst into a small clearing. 6 figures, cloaked, armed. Mercenaries, not rogues. Professional. Well-trained. Kael was already among them. Still mounted. His blade sang as it cut through the air. One mercenary went down. Then another. Blood sprayed across dead leaves. Go, Marcus roared. He wheeled his horse between Alara and the remaining attackers. His axe caught one in the chest. Ride! Alara didn't think. Just kicked the mare hard. The horse leaped forward. Through the clearing, past the carnage, a mercenary broke away, ran to intercept. His sword gleamed as it arced toward her. Alara threw herself sideways. The blade whistled past her ear, close enough to feel the wind of its passage. The mare screamed, reared. Alara's hand slipped. For one terrible moment, she hung suspended. Then gravity claimed her. She hit the ground hard. Air exploded from her lungs. The world spun. The mercenary loomed over her, sword raised, face hidden behind a dark mask. Shade sends his regards. The blade descended. Alara's hands flew up. Instinct, terror, desperate hope that maybe somehow silver light exploded from her palms. Not metaphor, not imagination. Actual light, bright enough to blind, hot enough to burn. It slammed into the mercenary like a physical force. He flew backward, crashed into a tree trunk hard enough to crack bark. Didn't get up. Alara stared at her hands. They glowed. Silver fire danced across her skin, wrapping around her fingers, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. What another attacker. Coming fast, sword already swinging. The silver light moved without her conscious thought. Whipped out like a lash, caught the man's wrist. Shattered bone. He screamed, dropped his weapon. Alara scrambled backward. The light followed, responding to her fear, her need to survive. A third mercenary, this one smarter, circled, waited for an opening. What are you? His voice was rough, uncertain. Good question. The silver fire coiled around Alara's arms now, not burning, not hurting, but they're real. Impossible. Movement to her left. Kael, still mounted, covered in blood that wasn't his. His eyes found hers across the clearing. Widened. For a moment, everything stopped. Then the last mercenary lunged, not at Alara, at Kael. Blade aimed for the king's exposed side. No! The word tore from Alara's throat. The silver fire responded, surged forward in a wave of light and heat and desperate protection. It caught the mercenary mid-leap, slammed him into the ground, held him there. Silence crashed down. 6 attackers, 4 dead, 2 unconscious, 1 pinned beneath Alara's impossible silver fire. Kael dismounted slowly. His gaze never left her, never left the light dancing across her skin. Moonfire. Marcus's voice held awe and fear. Untrained, raw, God above. The silver fire flickered. Alara's vision blurred. Her legs shook. The light dimmed, faded, winked out. She swayed. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her. Solid, real, warm. I've got you. His voice was rough. I've got you. Alara's hands gripped his torn shirt. What did I just... Later. He lifted her easily, carried her to his horse. We need to move, now, before whoever sent these decides to send more. Marcus was already checking the bodies. One mercenary still breathed. Barely. Marcus grabbed him by the collar, shook him. Who sent you? The man laughed. Wet. Pained. Shade paid us. Kill the Omega. Make it look like... Rogues! Lord Damon. Kael's arms tightened around Alara. We have our answer. The mercenary's eyes rolled back. He went limp. Marcus dropped him, wiped his hands on his pants like touching the man had soiled him. My king, what you just witnessed. I know what I saw. Kael settled Alara on his horse, mounted behind her. His arms caged her, protected her. Which is why we ride to Morgana, now, before this gets worse. They left the clearing at a gallop, left the dead behind, left questions bleeding into the forest floor. Alara leaned back against Kael's chest, let his heat chase away the cold spreading through her limbs. Her hands still tingled, still remembered the feeling of silver fire dancing across her skin. Moonfire, whatever that meant, whatever she was becoming. The cave entrance rose from the forest floor like a wound in the earth. Dark, yawning, ancient beyond measure. Moss clung to the stone in thick carpets. Vines twisted across the opening, but they'd been cut back recently. Someone lived here, maintained this. The horses refused to go closer. Even Kael's massive stallion balked, tossed its head, backed away with nervous snorts. We walk from here. Kael dismounted, helped Alara down. Her legs still shook. The aftershock of the moonfire, she still couldn't think of it without her mind stuttering, had left her wrung out. Hollow. Marcus stayed with the horses. I'll keep watch. If we're not back by sunset, I know the protocol, my king. Marcus's gaze flicked to Alara. Something like concern flickered in his steel eyes. Be careful. Morgana doesn't suffer fools. Kael took Alara's hand, led her toward the cave. As they approached, a figure materialized from the shadows within. Old, bent, wrapped in layers of gray fur that could have been cloth or could have been the pelts of 100 different beasts. Then the figure straightened, and Alara realized the frailty had been illusion. The woman was old, ancient, hair like a cloud of silver braids, skin lined like river maps. But her eyes, God, her eyes, yellow, glowing faintly. Wolf eyes that held the weight of centuries. Kael Thorn. Her voice was dry leaves in winter wind. You bring interesting problems to my doorstep. Elder Morgana. Kael inclined his head. Respect, not quite submission. We need your counsel. Of course you do. Morgana's gaze shifted to Alara. Pinned her, those yellow eyes seeming to look through skin and bone to something deeper. And you brought me a ghost. How thoughtful. Alara's breath caught. I'm not a ghost of what was, a shadow of what should have been. Morgana stepped closer, reached out with a hand that looked fragile but gripped Alara's chin with surprising strength, tilted her face up, inhaled near her throat. Alara's wolf pressed close to her ribs, confused, frightened, drawn. Moonfire and bond mark. Morgana released her, smiled, teeth too sharp for comfort. You smell like silver trees and old promises, like someone hid you in plain sight and hoped the forest would forget. What does that mean? Kael's hand tightened on Alara's. It means, Morgana said that you should come in by before you freeze. We have much to discuss, and little time. She turned and walked into the cave without checking if they followed. Kael and Alara exchanged a glance, then followed. The cave widened immediately, not natural, carved. Ancient runes spiraled across the walls, glowing the same pale blue as the wards at nightfall, but older, deeper. The ceiling soared out of sight, lost in shadows that even Alara's enhanced night vision couldn't penetrate. Roots dangled from above, white, glowing softly, pulsing like veins carrying light instead of blood. They cast everything in ethereal silver that made the world feel dreamlike, unreal. At the center of the cavern, a pool of still water reflected the glowing roots. Its surface was mirror perfect, undisturbed. Morgana settled herself on a flat stone near the pool, gestured for them to sit. Kael helped Alara down onto another stone, remained standing himself, watchful. You have questions. Morgana's yellow eyes reflected the pool's light. Ask them. What is she? Kael's voice was tight, controlled. The Moonfire. I've read the old texts, seen the descriptions, but you thought the Guardian bloodline died out 3 generations ago. Morgana's smile was sad. Everyone thought that, because that's what the Nightfall Kings wanted you to think. Alara's hands curled in her lap. Guardian, that's the second time someone's called me that. Because that's what you are. Morgana leaned forward. Though you don't know it yet, your mother made sure of that. Hid you, sealed your blood, taught you enough to survive, but not enough to understand. My mother was a Pack Omega, nothing special. Your mother, Morgana said gently, was the last Silver Guardian, daughter of the line that stood between the Nightfall Alphas and their madness since the first wolves walked these mountains. The words landed like stones thrown into still water, ripples spreading outward. That's not possible. Alara shook her head. We were nothing, servants. My father gambled everything away. You had exactly what you were supposed to have. Morgana's voice turned sharp. Poverty, obscurity, a reason for no one to look too closely at the Omega girl with strange eyes and stranger luck. Alara's breath came faster. You're saying my mother sacrificed everything to hide you, yes. Morgana stood, moved to the pool, gestured for them to join her. Look, both of you see the truth your ancestors tried to bury. Kael helped Alara to her feet. Together they approached the pool. Morgana's hand passed over the water. Ripples spread. The mirror surface clouded, then cleared to show images. A forest, older than old, trees that scraped the sky, and in a clearing, two figures. A massive alpha, bigger than any wolf Alara had ever seen, eyes burning gold, fur black as midnight. It paced, snarled, tore at the earth with claws that left furrows deep enough to plant crops in. Mad, completely, utterly. Then a second figure emerged from the trees, small, pale, human-shaped but glowing with silver light that pushed back shadows. An Omega. The Alpha lunged. The Omega didn't run, just lifted her hands. Silver fire bloomed, not to attack, to soothe. The light wrapped around the Alpha like chains made of moonbeams. Gentle, unbreakable. The Alpha fought, then stilled, then slowly, so slowly shifted back to human form. A man, young, scarred. He dropped to his knees before the Omega, pressed his forehead to her hands, and in that moment the silver light pulsed, connected them, bound them. The image faded. The first Alpha and the first Guardian. Morgana's voice was soft, reverent. He was unstoppable, a killing machine. The pack feared him, worshipped him, knew he would destroy them all eventually. And she saved him. Alara couldn't look away from the pool even though the images had gone. She balanced him. The Alpha power, true Alpha power, not the watered-down version most kings carry now it consumes. Burns, turns the mind to ash. Without an anchor, without something to ground it, every Alpha king goes mad eventually. Morgana looked at Kale. You know this. His jaw flexed. My father, my grandfather, before him. Yes, and you, Kale Thorne, walked the same path. Morgana's yellow eyes held no pity, only truth. The curse isn't a curse at all. It's the price of power without balance. Alpha without Omega. Dominance without submission. Submission. Alara's hands clenched. You make it sound like slavery. Not submission to the Alpha. Morgana turned to her. Submission to the bond. The Guardian doesn't kneel, doesn't serve. She stands beside the king and tells him when he's wrong, when he's straying, when the wolf is winning. She gestured to the pool again. New images formed, a woman in silver, crown on her head, hand on an Alpha's arm. The Alpha listened, adjusted, changed. Guardians aren't decorations. Morgana's voice hardened. They're the hand on the blade. The voice that says no when every other voice screams yes. They're partners, equals. The only thing standing between the Alpha and the abyss. Then why did they disappear? Kale's question was rough. Because 3 generations ago, your great-grandfather decided he didn't like being told no. Morgana's expression turned bitter. He had his guardian, his mate, his balance, and she was strong. Stronger than he wanted. She opposed him in council. Publicly. Made him look weak. So he killed her. Alara heard herself say it. Worse. He exiled her bloodline, stripped the guardian title, scattered the family across packed territories. Told the realm the curse was his to bear alone. Morgana's hands curled into fists. Within 5 years, he went mad. Murdered half his council. His own son had to put him down. The pieces clicked into place. The pattern repeated across generations. My mother, Alara's voice shook. She was the last, and she hid me to protect me. Yes, but she made a mistake. Morgana looked at Kyle. She thought if she hid you well enough, the Alphas would stop looking, would break themselves on their own curse and leave her daughter alone. But I'm still here. Kale's voice was flat. Still searching. Still calling to your mate across bloodlines and broken oaths. Morgana's smile was sad. The bond doesn't care about politics, about what was stolen or hidden. It only knows what it needs. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating. Ilara's mind raced. Guardian, not a gift, a responsibility, a burden passed down through blood. The moonfire, she looked at her hands. What is it? Your legacy, your birthright. Morgana crossed to her, took her hands. When a guardian bonds with their alpha, the moonfire awakens fully. It's protection, defense, a way to ground the alpha's power when it threatens to consume. But we're not bonded. Alara looked at Kale. We've barely spoken. 3 nights, that was the deal. I'm supposed to walk away. The bond doesn't wait for permission. Morgana released her hands. It forms when it forms. Some guardians bonded at first sight. Others took years, but once it begins, she shook her head. There's no unraveling it. Not without destroying both sides. Kale had gone very still. his eyes fixed on Alara with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You're saying we're already bonding? His voice was carefully controlled. That's why my wolf calmed when she arrived. Why the moonfire awakened when she was in danger. Yes, Morgana's gaze moved between them. The question now is what you do with that knowledge. I send her away. Kale's words were immediate, final. Far from nightfall, where the bond can't fully form, where she's safe. Safe, Morgana laughed. Bitter. Boy, you've learned nothing. The bond is forming whether she's here or on the other side of the realm. The only difference is whether you're together to stabilize each other when it completes. What happens if we're apart? Alara heard herself ask. Morgana's expression turned grave. The Alpha goes mad, faster, violently, and the Guardian, she paused. The moonfire turns inward, burns her alive from the inside. Slowly. Horror washed over Alara. How long? Weeks, maybe a month. The bond pulls, demands completion. When it's denied, it destroys. Kale's hands clenched. There has to be another way. Something there is. Morgana's gaze was ancient, knowing. You complete the bond, willingly. Both of you. Claim each other. Let the moonfire and the alpha power balance. It's what your bloodlines have been reaching for since the moment she walked into your throne room. And if we don't, Kale's voice was rough, then you both die, separately, slowly, in more pain than you can imagine. Alara's knees went weak. Kale caught her, his arms wrapped around her, solid, warm. There's more. Morgana's voice cut through the shock. Something you need to know before you decide. What? Alara managed. Morgana's yellow eyes found hers. You carry life. The bond has already begun the next generation. Whether you choose to complete it or not, a child grows within you. Half guardian, half alpha. The world tilted. Pregnant. The word echoed in Alara's mind. Impossible. They'd barely touched. Barely the bond, Morgana said softly, doesn't always wait for physical union. Sometimes the connection is enough, the need, the recognition. It plants the seed and waits to see if you'll water it or let it die. Kale's arms tightened around her. She felt him shaking. Or maybe that was her. Hard to tell where one ended and the other began. How long? His voice was barely a whisper. Early yet. Weeks, maybe less. Morgana's expression softened. But the child will not survive if the bond breaks. Guardian bloodlines require the balance. Alpha and Omega. Moonfire and raw power. Laura pressed a hand to her stomach. Flat, unchanged. But beneath her palm, beneath skin and muscle, something flickered. Fragile. Impossible. Real. I need air. The words tumbled out. I need... She pulled away from Kyle, stumbled toward the cave entrance, didn't run, couldn't, but walked fast enough that the glowing roots blurred. Outside, the forest had grown darker. Afternoon sliding toward evening. Marcus looked up from where he tended the horses. Started to speak. Alara raised a hand, kept walking. She made it 20 paces before her legs gave out. Sank to her knees in dead leaves. Pressed her forehead to the cold ground and tried to remember how to breathe. Guardian, bond, pregnant, dying if she left, dying if she stayed and it went wrong. No choices, not real ones, just different flavors of cage. Footsteps behind her. Heavy, deliberate. KL. He sank to the ground beside her. Didn't touch, just sat, close enough that his warmth reached her, far enough that she could still pretend she had space. I'm sorry. His voice was rough, raw. For all of it, for the throne room, the chains, for being what I am, for making you stop. Alara lifted her head, looked at him. You didn't make me anything. The bond did. Fate did. Our ancestors' choices did. She swallowed hard. But you've been trying to protect me since the moment I arrived. Failed job of it. His laugh was bitter. Have you? She sat back on her heels. You gave me 3 nights, promised freedom, taught me to lock my fear away, kept Vivian and her poison from destroying me at dinner, rode into an ambush to keep me safe. None of that matters if you're trapped by a bond you never wanted. And if I did want it, the words slipped out. Quiet. Dangerous. Kale's head snapped toward her, eyes wide, searching her face like he was trying to read a language he'd forgotten. What? Alara's hands shook. She curled them into fists to stop the trembling. I'm not saying I've decided. I'm not saying I forgive the beginning. But, she swallowed, what if there's a third option? Not the bond as prison, not death, but partnership. Like Morgana said, equals. Alara, you trusted me enough to teach me breathing techniques. to tell me about Isolde, to bring me here. She held his gaze. Trust me enough to make this choice. Not because the bond demands it, not because we'll die otherwise, but because maybe we could be something better than our ancestors were. Kale stared at her, something cracked in his expression. The careful control he wore like armor, the distance he'd maintained even when pulling her close. I have one night left. His voice dropped. One night before you were supposed to walk free. If you choose this, if you choose me, I need you to be sure, because once we complete the bond, there's no undoing it. And I can't be like my great-grandfather. Can't trap you and call it love. Then we have one night to figure out what this could be. Alara pushed to her feet, extended her hand. Not trap, not cage, but balance. Kale looked at her hand, then at her face. Yellow gold eyes meeting brown. He took her hand, let her pull him up. One night, he agreed, and then you choose, freely. Whatever that choice is, I'll honor it. Even if it destroys you, she wanted to ask. Even if we both burn. But she knew the answer, could see it in the set of his jaw. The shadows in his eyes, he would let her go, even if it killed him. The question was whether she could do the same. Whether freedom was worth the price of two lives. And one fragile, impossible life growing in the spaces between them. The ride back to Nightfall felt different. Alara sat before Kael on his stallion, his arms caging her, his chest solid against her back. The rhythm of hoofbeats matched her heartbeat. Marcus rode ahead silent and watchful, giving them the illusion of privacy, though his presence reminded them both that nothing in the pack world was truly private. The third day. The thought echoed with every hoofbeat. Tonight, the final night. The forest thinned as they climbed higher. Pine gave way to rock. The air grew colder, sharper. And ahead, rising from the cliffs like a scar against the sky. Nightfall Fortress waited. Home whispered something deep in Alara's chest. She shoved the thought away. It wasn't home. Couldn't be. Home was a place you chose, not a place that chose you through bonds and blood and impossible circumstances. But Kael's arms tightened slightly around her, as if he'd heard the thought anyway, as if his wolf recognized the lie. They reached the gates at sunset. The sky bled crimson and gold behind the fortress walls, painting the stone in shades of fire and shadow. Guards watched from the parapets. Torches flared to life along the battlements. The blue eternal flames in their sconces pulsed brighter as Kael passed, responding to their king's return. Seraphina waited in the courtyard. Her auburn hair was loose for once, falling past her shoulders. Dirt smudged her cheek. Her armor bore fresh dents. She'd been fighting. Brother. She fell into step beside Kael's horse as he dismounted. Her gaze flicked to Alara still seated. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition. Understanding. We need to talk. Now. Kael helped Alara down. His hands lingered at her waist a beat too long. Then he turned to his sister. The rogue's contained, but that's not the problem. Seraphina's jaw tightened. Lord Damon has been busy in your absence. He's called an emergency council session. Tonight. Says there are matters that cannot wait. What matters? Kael's voice went flat. Dangerous. The full moon ceremony. Seraphina glanced at Alara again. It's tonight. Required attendance. All highborn pack members. And Damon is pushing for decisions about the Luna position. Understanding crashed over Alara. The timing wasn't coincidence. Damon had orchestrated this. The attack. The forced ride to Morgana. Just enough time to gather his allies and strike while Kael was distracted. He wants Vivian crowned. Alara said it flat. Statement, not question. Seraphina's lips curved, sharp. He wants to force your hand, brother, and present Vivian before the full pack. Make her seem like the logical choice. The safe choice. Her gaze cut to Alara. Compared to a debt payment Omega with questionable bloodlines and no training. My bloodlines aren't questionable. The words slipped out before Alara could stop them. They're just inconvenient. Seraphina's eyebrow arched. Then she smiled. Real this time. I like her. Don't let Damon take her from you. No one's taking anything. Kael's hand found Alara's, laced their fingers together. The gesture was casual, deliberate, public. How long until the ceremony? 3 hours. Seraphina's expression turned serious. Enough time to bathe and dress, not enough time to plan properly, which is exactly what Damon wants. Kael's jaw flexed. His gaze swept the courtyard, cataloging guards' exits, threats. Then he looked down at Alara. You don't have to do this. I can send you to the private wing. Lock the wards. Keep you safe until... Until what? Alara squeezed his hand. until Damon crowns Vivian in my place, until your wolf tears itself apart because the bond is forming and I'm hiding in a locked room. Better than putting you in front of the pack while Damon has assassins waiting. Is it? She stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat, smell the cedar and pine. Morgana said guardians stand beside their alphas. Tell them when they're wrong. So I'm telling you now, running won't save either of us. It'll just make Damon bolder. Kale stared at her. Something raw flickered in his eyes. Fear, pride, hunger. You're sure? No. Honesty tasted bitter. But I'm here anyway. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Once. A promise or a goodbye. Hard to tell which. Marcus Sarah doubled the guards on the Luna's wing. No one enters without my explicit permission. His voice shifted. Command, Alpha, King. Search every guest attending the ceremony. Weapons check. No exceptions. Including Lord Damon. Marcus's tone suggested he'd enjoy that particular search. Especially Lord Damon. Serafina grinned. It will be my pleasure. They dispersed, guards moving to new positions. Servants scurrying with last-minute preparations. The fortress hummed with energy, anticipation. The kind that preceded either celebration or bloodshed. The third night, the final test. Kael led Alara through familiar corridors, past the dining hall where Vivian had spilled wine and smiled like a blade, past the throne room where chains had first marked her wrists, to the private wing where this had all begun. The Luna's chambers waited, fire already burning, a gown laid out on the bed, but Kael didn't release her hand, didn't step back toward the door. Instead, he pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her, pressed his forehead to hers, and just breathed. I need to ask you something. His voice was rough, low, and I need the truth. Okay. Are you staying because you want to? His eyes searched hers, gold and amber and desperately vulnerable. Or because the bond is forcing your hand, because if it's the latter, if you're doing this to save my life or yours, or the child's, I need you to tell me now. Before we walk into that arena and there's no going back. Alara's breath caught, the question beneath the question, the fear he'd been carrying since the throne room. You think I'm here out of obligation? I think you're here because Morgana gave you impossible choices and death on all sides. His hands cupped her face, gentle, reverent. I think you're brave enough to sacrifice yourself for others, and I think I couldn't bear it if you chose me for the wrong reasons. Her heart cracked, just a little, just enough to let something new slip through. You want the truth? She placed her hands over his. I'm terrified of the bond, of what I'm becoming, of standing in front of a pack that wants me dead and pretending I belong. His jaw tightened, started to pull away. She held him there. But I'm also furious. At your great-grandfather for breaking what should have been sacred. At my mother for hiding me instead of teaching me. At every choice that brought us here in chains and blood and desperation. Alara. And beneath all of it, she continued, beneath the terror and the anger, there's something else. Something I don't have a name for yet. But it's there when you look at me like I'm more than broken Omega. When you teach me to lock my fear away. When you bring me to Morgana instead of hiding the truth. She rose on her toes, brought their faces inches apart. So yes, I'm staying partly because the alternative is death, but I'm also staying because somewhere in the last 3 nights, you stopped being the monster I expected and became, she swallowed, possibility. Kale's eyes darkened, his pupils dilated, the gold bled brighter. When I kiss you, he said, voice dropping to barely a whisper. I won't stop. I won't be gentle. And I won't pretend it's anything less than claiming what's mine. Then kiss me after. Alara's pulse hammered. After the ceremony. After we survive Demon's poison. After I choose you in front of the entire pack. And if you don't survive, then you'll have to find another way to break your curse. She managed to smile, sharp, brave. But I'm not planning on dying tonight. He kissed her forehead, soft, lingering, a promise wrapped in tenderness. Neither am I. The gown was midnight blue. Alara stared at her reflection and barely recognized the woman looking back. The velvet clung to curves she'd never noticed before. The neckline dipped just low enough to show the hollow of her throat, where a mate mark would eventually sit. Her hair fell loose down her back, brushed until it shone. No jewelry, no crown, just her. Raw, real, fragile in ways that had nothing to do with strength. A knock at the door. Serafina entered without waiting for permission. She wore crimson tonight, armor beneath silk. a warrior dressed for court. You look good. She circled Alara slowly, assessing. Demon won't know what hit him, or he'll see exactly what he expects. Weak Omega playing dress-up. Then he's a fool. Serafina stopped in front of her. I've seen wolves twice your size with half your spine. You survived 3 nights in this fortress. Survived Vivian's venom. Survived an ambush that killed trained mercenaries. Her smile was sharp. You're a lot of things, Alara Ashford, but weak isn't one of them. Warmth spread through Alara's chest. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. From someone who wasn't trying to bond with her or save her or use her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Serafina's expression turned serious. Once we walk into that arena, everything changes. The pack will judge. Demon will strike. And my brother, she paused. His wolf is close to the surface tonight. The full moon pulls at all of us, but Alpha's especially. And Kael's curse makes it worse. I know. Do you? Serafina's yellow eyes held hers. When an Alpha loses control at a full moon ceremony, people die. And the first person he'll go for is whoever threatens his mate. I'm not his mate, not officially. His wolf doesn't care about official. Serafina's hand settled on Alara's shoulder. Grounding. Stay close to him. And if things go wrong, if he shifts and the madness takes him, don't run. Running triggers the hunt. Alara's throat tightened. What do I do? What Morgana said, stand your ground, use your voice, your moonfire if you have to. Serafina squeezed once. Guardians don't run from their alphas. They remind them who they are. Another knock. Marcus this time. His expression was carved granite. It's time. The arena had never felt so alive. Stone tiers rose in concentric circles around a packed earth floor. Every ledge, every stair, every available space was filled with bodies. Wolves in human skin, shoulders touching, breath fogging in the cold night air. The moon hung overhead full and heavy and impossibly bright. Its light turned everything silver, ethereal, raw. The third night, the final night. Alara descended the steps at Kael's side, her hand in his. Every eye tracked their movement. Whispers rose like wind through dead leaves. The debt payment beside the king, wearing Luna colors. Demon won't stand for Kael. Kael's grip tightened, steadying her, claiming her. They reached the center of the arena. The packed earth was scarred from countless ceremonies before this one. Blood and claw marks in old magic soaked into the ground until it hummed with power. Lord Demon stood on the opposite side, tall, silver-haired, handsome in the way snakes were handsome. Vivian at his side, draped in crimson silk that matched Serafina's but lacked the armor beneath. She smiled when she saw Alara. All teeth, all poison. The pack council filled the highest tier. Old wolves, powerful. Their judgment would carry weight. Kael released Alara's hand, stepped forward. His voice carried without effort. Nightfall. The single word silenced the murmurs. We gather under the full moon to remember what we are. Pack, kingdom, bloodline unbroken. Howls rose in response. Primal, ancient. Tonight we also address the question that has plagued this throne for 3 generations. Kael's gaze swept the gathered wolves. The Luna position. Empty since my great-grandmother threw herself from the tower rather than watch her mate descend into madness. Silence crashed down. Heavy, expectant. Lord Damon. Kael's attention cut to the silver-haired noble. You called this emergency session? Speak your piece, wow. Damon stepped forward, bowed just deep enough to satisfy protocol. Not an inch deeper. My king, the pack grows restless. The curse eats at you, we all see it. The empty throne beside yours is a wound that festers. He gestured to Vivian. I offer a solution. My daughter, highborn, trained, beautiful. A Luna worthy of Nightfall's throne. Vivian stepped forward, sank into a graceful curtsy. The moonlight loved her, made her pale skin glow, made her crimson dress shimmer like fresh blood. I would be honored to serve, she said, voice musical, perfect. To stand beside my king and ease his burden. Murmurs of approval rippled through certain sections of the crowd. The old families, the ones who valued bloodlines over bond. And what of the Omega? Demon's gaze cut to Alara. The debt payment you brought to our halls. Surely you don't intend to insult Lady Vivian by suggesting a common wolf could fill the Luna's place. The words landed like stones. Calculated. Cruel. Alara felt eyes turn toward her. Assessing, judging, finding her wanting. Kael's jaw flexed. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Alara Ashford is not common. His voice dropped. Dangerous. She carries guardian blood, the same bloodline that anchored the first Nightfall Alpha, the same power that kept our kings sane before my great-grandfather decided he knew better than the moon. Gasps echoed through the arena. The word guardian ricocheted off stone and hearts alike. Lies. Demon's voice cut through the shock. The guardian line died out. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what the Nightfall Kings wanted them to know. A new voice. Smooth. Amused. Edged like broken glass. Cassius Vane stepped from the shadows at the arena's edge. He wore black. Simple. No weapons visible. But he moved like violence personified. Like every step was a choice not to kill. The pack shifted. Nervous energy rippling outward. Cassius, Kale's voice held warning. You were exiled. I was invited to leave. Different thing. Yeah, Cassius's smile was sharp. And I came back because I hate seeing history repeat, especially when the players don't know they're in a cycle. He crossed to the center of the arena, circled Alara slowly. His gaze was assessing, ancient, knowing. She is guardian, he said to the crowd, direct descendant of the first. Her mother sealed her blood to hide her, to protect her from kings who break their guardians rather than be balanced by them. You speak treason, Demon's voice rose, undermining the king's authority. I speak truth, which is more than you can claim. Cassius' attention cut to Demon. How much did you pay the mercenaries to kill her? How many rogues did you hire to test Nightfall's defenses? How long have you been planning to crown your daughter, regardless of what the king wanted? Demon's face went white, then red. Proof, he spat. You have no proof, don't I? Cassius pulled a scrap of fabric from his pocket. Dark, stained. The same symbol Alara had seen before. House Shade's twisted wolf. Found this on a mercenary's body. Strange. I thought rogues didn't carry noble house markers. Kale moved, fast, crossed to Damon in 3 strides. His hand shot out, grabbed the noble by the throat, lifted him until his feet left the ground. You tried to kill her. Not a question, a statement carved in ice and rage. Demon clawed at Kale's hand, gasped. She's bewitching you. The king would never. The king, Kale said softly, is tired of nobles who think they know better. Tired of watching Omegas die because Alphas are too proud to accept balance. His grip tightened. Demon's face purpled. Brother, Seraphina's voice cut through the tension. Warning, the pack watches. Kale's eyes had gone full gold. Wolf too close to the surface. The moon pulled at him, the curse gnawed, and Damon's betrayal had torn away the last shred of control. Alara moved before she could think. Crossed to Kale, placed her hand on his arm. Let him go. He tried to kill you. Kale's voice was barely human now, more growl than words. I know, and he'll answer for it. She stepped closer, but not like this. Not with you proving every fear the pack has about the curse. He deserves death. Maybe, but you deserve better than becoming your father. Her hand moved to his face, cupped his jaw, forced his gaze from Demon to her. Look at me, see me, choose me over the rage. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The entire arena held its breath. Then Kale's fingers uncurled. Demon dropped, collapsed to the ground, wheezing. Kale's forehead pressed to Alara's, his breathing ragged. You asked for a leash, she whispered. I'm right here. His arms came around her, pulled her close, and slowly, so slowly, the gold in his eyes dimmed to amber. When he lifted his head, his gaze swept the arena. Lord Demon Shade, you orchestrated attacks on Nightfall, hired assassins to kill an Omega under my protection, conspired to undermine your king. Demon struggled to his knees. My king, I only wanted exile. The word cracked like a whip. You and your daughter. Cross Nightfall borders again, you die. Guards moved forward, grabbed Demon. Vivian screamed, struggled, but the guards were implacable. As they dragged the disgraced nobles toward the exit, Demon twisted. Met Kyle's gaze. You'll regret this. Choosing her over tradition, over safety. The curse will take you both. Maybe. Kale's arm wrapped around Alara's waist, anchored her to his side. But at least we'll burn together. The guards hauled Damon away. His screams faded into the night. Silence settled, heavy, charged. Then Cassius laughed. Low, appreciative. Well, that was cleaner than I expected. He turned to Alara, bowed slightly. Guardian, may your fire burn brighter than their fear. Before she could respond, he melted back into the shadows, gone as quickly as he'd appeared. Kale turned to face the pack. Alara Ashford carries guardian blood. She awakened Moonfire without training. She stood between me and the madness when every instinct I have screamed to tear Demon apart. He released her, stepped back, giving her space, giving the pack a clear view. She is not debt payment, not obligation, not convenience. His voice dropped, rough, raw. She is the other half of my soul. The balance I've needed since I took this cursed throne. The only thing standing between me and my father's fate. He extended his hand. Alara Ashford, do you accept the bond? Accept me as your mate, your alpha, your equal. Every eye in the arena locked on her, waiting, judging. Ilara's heart hammered. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. She could say no, could walk away. The bond might kill her eventually, but she'd die free. Or she could step forward, take his hand. Choose partnership over prison, balance over breaking. She looked at Kyle, really looked. Saw the scars and the shadows and the desperate hope he was trying to hide. Saw the man who'd taught her to lock her fear away, who'd ridden into ambush to protect her, who'd brought her to Morgana for truth instead of hiding behind convenient lies. Saw possibility. I do. Her voice carried, clear, strong. But know this, I'm not your savior. I'm your partner. We save each other. Or we don't save anything. She placed her hand in his. Silver light exploded where their skin touched. Not metaphor, actual light. Moonfire blooming bright enough to rival the moon itself. It wrapped around their joined hands, pulsed in time with two heartbeats becoming one rhythm. The pack felt it, the shift, the click of something ancient and right sliding into place. Kale pulled her close. His other hand cupped the back of her neck. Mine, he breathed against her lips. Ours, she corrected. Then he kissed her, deep, claiming, consuming. His mouth moved against hers with desperate hunger. Years of loneliness, generations of broken bonds. All of it poured into this single point of connection. The moonfire surged, silver light flooded the arena, washing over the packed earth, over the gathered wolves, warm, protective, safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the pack was on their knees, not in submission, in recognition. Luna? Someone whispered. Then another. Then a dozen voices rising to a roar. Luna, guardian, queen. Marcus stepped forward, in his hands a crown, silver, set with moonstones that caught the light and threw it back in fractals. The Luna's crown, empty for 3 generations. Kale took it, held it up for the pack to see. Then he placed it gently on Alara's head. My Luna, my guardian, my mate. The pack howled. The sound shook the stones, primal, joyous, right. Kale's hand found the place where her neck met her shoulder. His teeth grazed the skin, gentle. Asking permission even now, Alara tilted her head, offered her throat. Mark me. He bit down, not hard enough to break skin deeply, just enough to leave his claim, his scent, his promise. Silver and gold light exploded. The mate bond sealed with a flash that left the arena gasping. Alara felt it settle into her bones. Felt Kyle's heartbeat echo in her chest. Felt the moonfire and the alpha power twined together like lovers finally reunited. Balance. She turned in his arms, found the same spot on his neck, bit down. His groan rumbled through his chest, the bond pulsed, completed. When they pulled apart, matching marks gleamed on their throats, silver on hers, gold on his, proof of the bond, proof of the choice. The pack surged forward, not threatening, celebrating. Wolves pressed close, touched them, scented them, accepted them. Serafina reached them first, pulled Alara into a fierce hug. Welcome to the family, sister. Marcus bowed, deep, respectful. My Luna. The celebration stretched into the night. Wine flowed, music rose. The full moon watched it all with ancient approval, but eventually Kyle pulled Alara away, led her from the arena, through corridors, to chambers she'd never seen. The true Luna's wing, not the borrowed rooms she'd occupied before. The space was vast, beautiful. A massive bed draped in silver and midnight blue, windows overlooking the mountains, a balcony where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. It's been waiting for you. Kale's hand settled at her waist, since the moment you walked into my throne room and refused to kneel. Alara turned in his arms. The crown still sat on her head. Heavy, right. 3 nights, she said. That was the bargain. And you stayed. I stayed. She rose on her toes, kissed him, soft, sweet. Though technically I think we need to renegotiate terms. His laugh was low, rough, beautiful. What terms? Forever or as close as we can manage. Her hand found his over her stomach, where new life grew. Impossible. Perfect. For 3 instead of 2. His eyes widened, then softened. He dropped to his knees before her, pressed his forehead to her belly. My Luna, my guardian, my everything. Alara's hands tangled in his hair. The moonfire pulsed gently. The bond hummed. And for the first time since chains had bit her wrists, she felt something close to peace. Not freedom, not the kind she'd imagined in human cities with coffee and anonymity, but partnership, balance. A cage built from love maybe, but one she'd helped design, one she chose every day. 6 months later, the council chamber was smaller than the throne room, more intimate, round table carved from ancient wood, seats for 20, currently occupied by 15. Alara sat at Kael's right hand. Her stomach swelled gently beneath her gown. Visible, undeniable. The pack had celebrated when she'd announced the pregnancy, had treated it like the miracle Morgana said it was. Half guardian, half alpha, the first of a new generation. The southern border trade routes are secured. Marcus pointed to the map spread across the table. No rogue activity in 3 months. Good. Kale's hand found Alara's under the table. Squeezed. A habit he'd developed. Constant reassurance that she was there. Real. His. And the Omega reforms. Serafina looked at Alara. Progressing. We've opened the first Guardian training school. 5 students so far. All young Omegas who showed signs of moonfire. Alara traced patterns on the map. In a generation, we'll have enough Guardians to balance every major pack's alpha. Murmurs of approval circled the table. Not everyone had supported the reforms at first. But seeing Kale's transformation, the calm in his eyes, the control over his wolf, the wisdom in his judgments, had convinced most. Balance worked. The meeting concluded. Wolves filed out, until only Kael, Alara, and Serafina remained. I'm heading to the Eastern Watch. Serafina stood, stretched. Reports of unusual activity, probably nothing, but I'll feel better checking personally. Be careful. Alara's hand moved to her stomach, protective. Something feels off tonight. Serafina's gaze sharpened. Your moonfire sensing danger? Maybe, or pregnancy paranoia. Alara managed a smile. Hard to tell the difference these days. After Serafina left, Kael pulled Alara close. You're worried. Cassius hasn't been seen in months. Demon and Vivian are still out there somewhere nursing grudges. She leaned into his warmth. It feels too quiet. Sometimes quiet is just quiet. But his arms tightened around her. Though I've learned to trust your instincts. They moved to their private chambers. The balcony door stood open. Cool night air carried the scent of pine and distant snow. Alara stepped outside. The moon hung heavy and full, just like the night of the ceremony. The night everything changed. Kael joined her, wrapped his arms around her from behind. His hands settled over her stomach. Protective, reverent. Do you regret it? His voice was soft. Staying choosing this. Every day. She felt him tense, covered his hands with hers. I regret the chains, the fear, the way we started, the choices stolen from both of us. Alara. But I don't regret this. She turned in his arms. Us, the bond, the baby, the possibility we're building. Her hand cupped his face. 3 nights became a lifetime, and I'd choose it again, even knowing the kid. He kissed her, slow, deep, tasting of forever and promises kept. When they pulled apart, the moonlight bathed them in silver. The mate marks on their necks gleamed, gold and silver, alpha and guardian, balance incarnate. Far below in the courtyard, a figure watched from the shadows. Cassius Vane tilted his head, studied the couple on the balcony. A hooded figure joined him. The guardian is claimed, the ancient voice said. The child grows. Our time narrows. Cassius smiled. Patience. The bloodline is what we've waited for. They vanished into darkness. Above, Alara shivered. Kael pulled her closer. We have time, he murmured. We have each other. And we have a pack ready to defend what we've built. She smiled. Let him pull her back inside where warmth waited, where their future grew, where balance lived in every breath. Outside, the moon watched, patient, knowing. Some stories ended in crowns and celebration. Others were just beginning.